Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my own quad dice ability. It's Tom. What's up, buddy?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, we're thrilled to have him back on the show, Uncle Adam from Tabletop Minions, one of the large staff they have there. What's going on, sir? How you doing?
Yes, it's going well. It's staying mostly indoors, spending time sheltering in hobby, and having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you been getting more done? Do you find yourself actually being a little more hobby productive?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I'm like, during the normal week back in the day, in the before times.
Yes.
I would honestly I get to hobby more on the weekend, but during the week I would, if I was lucky, get to hobby maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 nights a week, because I'm making a video on Thursday or Wednesday usually, and I'm hanging out with a bunch of friends on Friday and stuff like that and whatever, and maybe having dinner with my mom and that kind of thing. And so now it's basically I can usually hobby Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at least, and then on Fridays we've been the group that we normally hang around with, we've been talking on Discord, but I can be hobbying while I'm doing that, so it's kind of helpful as well. Yeah.
Double dipping. Good.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, it's funny because my regular D&D group has moved online, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We don't all get together, which has meant that now I'm sitting at this desk and I'm like, well, when everybody used to come over to play, I would step away and we'd be at the other table, and obviously I wouldn't hobby there. But if
now
if I'm gonna sit at this desk anyway, I
don't know why you wouldn't.
Might as well, right?
Yeah.
So Vince, now you are that guy at your D&D table who's not dialed in. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm perfectly dialed in. It's just also maybe getting some paint done. It's just responsible. I'm just maximizing my efficiency. All right.
Indeed.
Let's get to the news, though. What do we got going on, Tom?
Oh man, we got tons of stuff.
So surprise to me.
Rumor engine.
Yeah, it's up on the screen. It is two hands with some kind of bone flute. Just jamming on the bone flute. That generally means something else, but we're gonna stick with this. I'm just gonna keep calling it the bone flute.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just blowing on that bone flute. So obviously there is already a Nurgle Piper with something similar.
Yep.
Do you have thoughts on this, Tom? Or Adam?
I mean, Adam, go ahead. I'll let you take a shot.
I feel like it's one of two things. At first I was like, oh, it's probably orc, because they feel like they would use bone flutes, I guess. Sure. I mean, that's just, but the hands seem too small, honestly. Right. So now I'm a little bit leaning either towards potentially Grots, or maybe even, I don't know, could be Seraphon, lizard folks, potentially.
Yeah, it does kind of look like tiny little lizard hands, who would also probably use a little bone flute. The hands do look very skinny, right? Yeah. They are little fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I could see that. I thought about Seraphon as well. Yeah, I thought about Lizardman, Slan, whatever we want to call them, whichever generation this is.
Right.
Tom, what about you? You sticking with Nurgle?
It's clearly Nurgle.
Uh-huh.
So it has 3 fingers, which is what Nurglings have.
Okay.
And so
there are other things that have 3 fingers in the world, but
if you look at all the Nurgling hands, it's the scale of Nurglings. So here's my call. I think it's either a full Nurgling Blood Bowl army.
Okay.
Like a Blood Bowl team of Nurglings. Like they've went halflings, and so they're going to swing the other way and do the other fun, wacky thing, which is all because they've shown that they don't care about power. And so I'm going to go with Nurglings. Or this is part of maybe the new Nurgle release that we had predicted, and this could be like an Underworlds. That's like a demonic Underworlds Nurgle warband, and so we could get them. We don't have like a Plague Bear or Nurgling Underworlds warband, and so this could potentially be that. Those are the 2 things that I'm going to go for. But to me, like music and Nurgle. And even the aesthetics, like it all just rings like Sloppity Biopiper. Like if you go look at the models, it looks like super in line with the design kind of aesthetic there.
Okay.
So the question is it just vanilla Nurgle? To me, is it vanilla Nurgle, or does it fit in one of those other boxes?
Gotcha.
Yeah, so like I would love to see like a full Underworld Nurgling warband or something. Like
Sure.
really have them go wild. So
The Nurgling Jam Band comes to the Underworlds.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like it's just like a jazz ensemble.
Maybe
Of
there's a
Nurgling.
Nurgling with like a jug. It's the Jug Band. It's Emmett Otter's Nurgling Christmas Jug Band. Nurgling Jug Band Christmas. Yes, absolutely.
I will.
Or-
I will be
Go.
super excited to not buy that. Just like I just don't like. I don't know what it is. There's something like I love like Blight Kings. I love all that kind of stuff. But when they start getting into like Nurglings with the little kind of comic relief, like dancing around farty blobs of snot, I'm
Yep.
just not interested. I don't know what it is, but I just don't like it.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, like it's obviously everybody knows the model that I'm talking about, but here's the like to me, this is just this like that the flute and all that could be on the base of this model on a Nurgling, and so like it's completely in line with the design of Sloppity. So we'll see,
Okay.
but that's where my vote's at. I'm
Nice.
boring.
No, I think it's a good vote. I'm going to support your idea for Emmett Otter's Nurgling Jug Band Christmas Extravaganza Party because that sounds amazing.
Well, let me just jump in, like, and you've hit on something. The other thing that we don't often consider for models is that it could be a special edition model, like to celebrate an anniversary or something like that. You said a Christmas, a Christmas band or whatever.
Yeah,
but
sure.
We do have the 5th anniversary of AOS coming this summer.
And you think they're going to celebrate that with a piping Nurgling band?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. But
I mean, that would
maybe-
be an amazing way to celebrate. I'm not going to lie.
Maybe they do it with a whole demon band, so all of your chaos demons, and so you can have like a corn drummer, like a bloodletter a bloodletter drummer, maybe.
Korn would clearly be the guitar player.
Well, yeah, but do they have guitars? I mean,
Sure.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yes.
but
Do they? Yes, the stringed instruments are very ever present in the world. They have been around for thousands of years.
I don't believe it.
Or those big triangle Russian ones, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
humongous, and then you could hit somebody with it potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, like I saw the picture of Korn in the Soulbound book. That dude loves guitar. That's what he's all about.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, like the I think a chaos band would be amazing. Yeah, I fully support that. So I
Like,
guess
there's
Siege
been
was the
jokes
guitarist
about it.
beforehand. So in 40K, so
And there's been jokes about it, obviously, and so like I could see something like that as some celebratory model of like having a, like a marching parade or whatever of little demons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I just want to quickly call out a comment that rolled by here because I agree with it. Paul, our good buddy Paul, friend of the show, had said, "What happened to Tom's hobby table? It's just got a chest of ice and a very small amount of organized miniatures. This is the cleanest your hobby table has been in months, Tom. Months. I see you've taken a strong hand. You're doing your spring cleaning here, apparently."
Yes.
Well,
I'm having to operate professionally out of this space, and so it's changing the way that I'm actually functioning.
Sure. Clean
indeed.
space, clean mind. So there you go.
Mm.
All right. What else we got?
What else? So just all the Lumineth stuff this week.
No, pause. Shut up. Shut your mouth. I got to quote Dana here. Dana just said Emmett Slaughter's Plague Town Christmas, which is just amazing. Like, nailed it. That is what it is. I'm sorry, that's too incredible. Not to interrupt you. That is my favorite thing maybe ever in the history of this show. So, yes, that should happen. Emmett Slaughter's Plague Town Christmas. I love that so much. Please, GW, make this be the thing that's happening. All right, please continue, Tom. I'm sorry. That struck me as the greatest thing ever.
Elves.
Elves, yes.
Elves. Lots of elves. We had the Lumineth book get announced today. Kind of moving backwards, today was the book. Earlier yesterday, we had an article on the endless spells. And they look good.
Okay. So you like the endless spells?
I mean, I think so. We don't have all the rules, so we don't know all the details to it. Have you, Adam? Have you seen these yet?
Not the new endless spells. Is it just like a big butter churn?
You'd
That's
think
what
so,
it should
right?
be for the. Yeah, that
Yeah.
would make sense. That would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
very on brand
Yeah.
for them.
I'm
But
pulling up the images. Give me a
sure,
second.
it seems like one of them can be attacked, which I actually like because it's clearly some kind of wall that can hold things off. So I wish all the walls could be attacked. That would be actually nice because then you could clear space, like shoot them down.
Maybe is what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We got snippets of incomplete rules.
Right, because we have also a bunch of endless spells that like they become the model, like they're associated with the unit. So I think about like the Arachne Cauldron, like it becomes part of the model that it's associated with.
Sure.
Or I think about like the Balewind, it becomes part of the model, and so those rules may just be while it is part of the model, minus this to attack, bonus to save.
Yeah, you're putting yourself in a little timeout triangle there. I get it.
Yeah, which like, and what I suspect is that it will truly be a timeout triangle. Here's the image where like I don't think you're gonna be able to attack across it.
So there you go, swirly crystals, a little timeout series of elf rune lightning, and you turn to stone, which
right.
The ability is called Turn to Stone. I cannot be the only person who immediately thought of Electric Light Orchestra and started singing that song. I can't be the only one, right? I can't be.
Well, it's funny that you say that.
I was thinking it.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I was thinking about how amongst the Chaos Dwarves, the worshippers of Hashut, the Sorcerer Kings, as they would channel the magic associated with Hashut, they would also often petrify. And so the more powerful Sorcerer Kings would eventually turn to statues. I was like, man, nailed it. Hashut's back. Like, there's the Hashut heresy right there. Petrification of stuff around the mountain rune. Done.
So, I mean, obviously with these endless spells, the one that's like, all this is dependent on points, so who knows? But the one that jumped out at me was obviously the Twin Stones. If it ends up being that, like, it's a perma +1 to cast, is what it seems to be doing, because you can always just choose to take 1 and reset it to 1. But then if you're just casting a lot, which this army clearly seems to have the capability to do, like if Teclis is near there or whatever, right? He can shoot the number way up and then have another caster just power anything he wants through. And you can be getting, 5 spells around out on 10s, 11s, whatever, something like that. Since we got it confirmed in the White Dwarf article that we know Teclis can just auto cast 4 spells around on a 10.
Well, so we reported back in February that Teclis is going to have a variable mechanic where he auto casts 4 spells on 10, or 3 spells on 11, or 2 unstoppable spells.
Sure.
And what we have now gotten with this battle report that's leaked out from the new White Dwarf is that we know for sure that he casts 4 on 10. So I would assume the rest of that rumor was true, which is he'll have this variable level that he can tinker with, which I don't know if that's good for the meta or not. Like, I haven't been able to, like, when I think about Tzeentch, when I think about Nagash, when I think about Seraphon, like, it's a really interesting, like, you have an entire suite of hyper strong casters that have their own ability to basically say no or say yes to their own spells and push them through no matter how strong their opponent is magically. So it's really interesting.
Well, there's one of two worlds. Either it goes Affinity and it's bad, as I said this in a chat, where either it goes Affinity and it's bad because everything either becomes super magic or anti-magic, and that's a terrible meta, or we get the Mr. Burns effect, as we all know, from where they all the diseases are trying to rush through the door at once, and none of them can actually get through, and basically they all just counter each other out, and none of it really matters, and life continues on, which is also fully possible. Who knows? Yeah. Time will tell.
Anyways, so here's the new Elf Endless spells. From that same battle report, what it seemed like is that we don't have any elf terrain.
Yay! Let me ask you a question. I want to go to Adam on this one because we haven't had you on the show. How do you feel about the like army specific terrain?
You mean like visually, or like having it, like using it in your army or something along those lines?
Yes. So like, Khorne gets a little blood temple, and Flesh Eater courts have this little bone throne, and
the dwarves have their pizza oven.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And the lizardmen brought a temple that they don't actually get to set up in or put near them. It just kind of shows up on the table, and so on and so forth, right? How how much do you care if something you were looking at had that kind of terrain?
I mean, if it's a cool looking piece of terrain,
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's honestly that's kind of important.
Okay.
Looking at these endless spells, I I wouldn't run any of them because, well,
Right.
the swoopy one that's got the two stones is sort of
Yeah.
cool looking, but that weird lightning fence, that's
Nah,
you
I'm
know,
against it.
yeah. I wish I love Games Workshop. I wish they would stop trying to make lightning, like you know what I mean, lightning and
Sure.
smoke.
Smoke
Honestly,
especially,
like
yeah.
yeah,
Please stop modeling mist and smoke. Yes.
yeah, if we could cut that out, that would be great. I can imagine that. So I don't know. I like a lot of the terrain that they've made for Age of Sigmar. I mean, and the new Warcry stuff. I
Sure.
really, 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 really like. But I don't. I've never decided. Yes, I'm going to make sure I have this specific piece of terrain because it works with my army. But then again, I have a tendency to play a lot of soup,
Yeah.
so it doesn't. I'm not looking for that extra edge. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, sure. For me, it's like I like them if I feel like I could just take them and put them on a table anywhere and they would make sense. That's actually why I didn't mind picking up the Seraphon one because it's just a big pyramid. And
Sure.
I
Yeah.
just have it out on my table as like a piece of terrain. It is
Right.
just like it plays in, doesn't matter if I'm playing Seraphon, it's just a cool piece of terrain to sit on the table. Like, cool, a big Aztec pyramid. That's a neat thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the big Warcry Citadel and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's a gorgeous piece. That's a centerpiece, really, and so that's really cool. You build a table kind of around something like that.
Right, right.
But I literally I can't think of a time that I've ever bothered with the actual rules that they say this is the rules for this particular piece of terrain. You know what I mean?
The only one I ever use, and even we even modify it now because we don't use the current rules anymore, is
Mhm.
the two arcane, the realm gates, the teleporty gates.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we'll put two of those on the table so that people can teleport around and it's fun, wacky times. Who doesn't
Absolutely.
love teleporting troops? That's just fun.
Yeah,
It's the
no,
only thing I've ever used the rules.
I've got those as well, and they're all painted up, and I had a lot of fun making all the. Well, again, there was this weird sort of drippy lightning stuff going on, but I airbrushed the heck out of it to be super neon bright green, and it kind of worked out pretty well. And I do like that kind of like Miss Pac-Man. Like you go off this side and then you come out on that side.
Yeah,
Of situation. That's fun. But yeah, a lot of the other stuff. I mean, even like in normal games when and I don't when you like roll for each piece, like, oh, this is arcane and this is cursed and all that kind of stuff, we almost never do that with the people that I play with. I don't know, there's a lot of rules, it seems, in games as I get older that I have a tendency to go, yeah, we're just going to skip that, I'm just not going to bother, so
Sure. And nothing wrong with that. That's actually one of the things I like. I'm a big fan of that in design. Like, you should keep the core of actually, like, your game plays fine with just this amount of rules. One of the things I like about AOS. You can, like, shelve so much stuff from AOS and not need it. You can be like, no, we don't need to worry about realms and this kind of stuff or any of this realm crap. We're not going to worry about this terrain crap. And, like, the game still runs fine. It's still perfectly functional. Like, the core is solid.
I feel like any kind of game where they're like, okay, well, you have to roll to see what the weather's like. Well, like,
Sure.
It's kind of equal. Oh, now everybody has -1. Well, if everybody has -1, then nobody has -1. You know what I mean?
Right,
like
right.
that.
Why
To
did we
me,
do this?
exactly. Like if there was a situation where, like, okay, well, now it's snowing and my army is mostly Yetis. Well, then, hey, I lucked into getting a bonus, but that seems almost unfair at that point. So, yeah, I've never understood that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
And there is some of that, like the realm effects of like limiting range to 12 inches.
Mhm.
Really good for melee armies, really bad for range armies.
Right. Exactly.
So
yeah.
It used to be the case back in wartime. It was the same thing because you could roll for. Speaking of, since we're going to talk about Warcry and skirmish games, I remember you could roll for those kinds of effects in wartime as well. And like whenever you were playing a night game or something, it was just terrible. If you were playing one of the ranged armies, your range was limited to just almost nothing.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
you were just getting stomped. You were just hoping dawn broke, like in the second or third round, or you were dead.
What was that? I forget what the rule was in 40K, where you would roll to see if it was dark or whatever.
Night fighting or whatever, right?
Something like that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you'd have to, like, for like the first couple of turns, you'd be like, all right, well, I
Yeah.
guess we're just not doing anything because nobody can shoot anybody. And you know what I mean?
Right.
We're
In
just
an
gonna-
all shooting game. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We're just like, guess we'll just wait until it gets light out and we can see each other because we don't have, night vision optics, obviously, here in the 41st millennium.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So endless spells, they're okay. I like the swirly twirly crystals. I think they look cool. They look like a thing out of Elf.
Of
Like
the three, I think, yeah.
Yeah, they look
Yeah.
like the thing that he would talk about. Like he passed through the swirly twirly gumdrop forest, and then he went through the Washington Tunnel, and that's or whatever, and that's
Candyland.
yeah, exactly. That's what it looks like. Probably just the way they painted it, because it's full of those like bright pink and purple colors or whatever swirling around each other, like it rolled out of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
So is GW going to release a glitter paint, or do they expect that we use our own?
I think we have to use our own, yeah. But
All
on the
right.
bright side, you can sometimes just mix a little glitter in, to any of your paints and turn them into glitter paints.
That's
Checks
a hobby. That's a hobby cheating video. Just
There you
waiting
go,
to happen.
right there, yeah. Making your minis fabulous. Absolutely. Look for that one coming soon. All right. What else we got, Tom?
So with that other leaked information, we got a bunch of Lumineth stuff that dropped from the White Dwarf. It looks like we're not getting any new miniatures. Like there's no
the range.
We have seen the range. We have truly seen it. They're not adding other stuff. And if you doubted this, just check out and obviously this is appropriate given that what we're talking about today, they also released the Warcry stats in the new White Dwarf.
Oh,
So we know what is going to be there. And what's interesting about this is kind of twofold. The first is that heroes are like baked into this list.
Huh.
Like because like the calf call the one chick
Yep.
and the stone mage, like
they're
here.
Heroes. Are they
They're
meant to be
heroes.
for like
And they're commanders too.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're definitely commanders. And I have the list of abilities somewhere else, and it's really long too. It's not like the standard like 5 abilities. It's like 10 abilities. Huh. It's really fascinating. And so the other thing that was interesting about this is that the cards aren't Warcry normal.
Yeah, they're in a very odd format. Yeah.
Right. And so like if I wanted to like scan and print these out, like they're not going to be on the same like dimensions of normal cards.
Well, this is the format that they put in like mercenaries and
right.
Whatever. Yeah. Like, yeah, it's not the card format. You're right. It's the book format.
Yeah.
So maybe the cards, when they sell a book or a deck of cards, if they sell a deck of cards for the new elves, then they will be in the standard format, I would assume.
I would hope.
Yeah. One can only hope. What I will say, some interesting things about it is that we have a helmless Stone Guard. Like this looks like captain of the Stone Guard.
Yep.
And we have a helmless option that was here. That was exciting. So we don't have any of those big bull horn ones. And you can see some of the different unit captains and stuff like that kind of mixed in. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of what we also got the points. Sorry, I'm jumping around. We know that Teclis is 660 points. And we know, like, I don't have the point sheet here, but we learned a bunch of point stuff with these guys. Yeah, so it's been an interesting set of leaks with the new White Dwarf. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Somebody asked what in the comments, what are all the Lumineth units? Let me see if I can do it off the top of my head. So the Dawn Riders, the Horsey Boys, the Archers, the Spearmen / Sword people, right? Because they can or whatever.
Yep.
The Stone Guard, Teclis,
and they're armed with either stone mallets
or picks,
or diamond pick hammers.
Yep. The girl with the little bowl with the face mask, the stone mage, the 2 versions of the big giant cow monster. I said Teclis, and then the Light of Eltharion. Did I miss anybody?
I don't think so. It's worth noting that the ones with the mallets have toughness 5.
Yeah.
In here, which is generally
that's
been
their
associated.
Strength. You mean their?
I'm sorry,
5?
Right?
Yeah, they're still toughness 4.
They're still toughness 4.
Well, no, which is higher than the average elf. Like if you look at a lot of these guys who don't have shields, they're only toughness 3, which is what we would expect. So, and the Stone Guard aren't wielding shields.
No, they're using hammers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they are clearly meant to be tougher.
And they are at 12 wounds instead of the 8 standard that we see with a lot of these, which could point to the possibility of them being 2 wound models. Because we know from the White Dwarf, we know that they are going to be 5 models for 100 points. Mm-hmm. And so the question is will the Stone Guard be 5 wounds for 100 points?
Sure. Are we going to see our first 2 wound regular elves? Oh,
Dun dun
we're
dun.
breaking new ground here if that's the case. How have elves gotten so tough? What is the world coming to? Truly,
Uh,
how will the forces of chaos
because
They've,
they
survive?
worship.
They've been
They
drinking their
worship
milk.
That's right.
passion.
Yeah.
Exactly. Lots of cows equal lots of milk, strong bones. There you go. See? It's just done. That's simple math right there. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So lots of information about Lumineth. Yeah. I'm kind of excited. I mean, I want to see the rest of the rules obviously first.
Now we just wait to hope that maybe they go on pre-order this next weekend. We'll see.
Yeah.
Not pre-order this next weekend. That we get the announcement of the pre-order this next weekend is what I'm saying. So that like this Sunday we get the announcement, and then that would mean the next Saturday is when they would go on pre-order. So I think that's what we're all hoping. We'll see.
Do you think that they're going to have to stretch this out because of the whole virus thing a little bit to as far as shipping and stuff like that, global shipping and all that kind of jazz? I mean, I know that they've opened up the web store again to some degree, but
it's a
as
good
far as
question.
stores,
I don't know is the answer, because a lot of the like all of the elvish the elf stuff and the giant stuff we know was already mostly like it was done. It was factory done and shipped into the like middle warehouse, storehouse or whatever. So then the question becomes, well, like let's say you can order it directly from the website. We know they'll open up Lumineth with that big special box, right?
And it was implied. It was implied there was going to be a distribution gap between the box and the rest of the line.
Right. So
Like
my
just in the
guess is
battle.
they'll launch it with just that one box, and we should all expect long ship times on it, right? Like expect it to take a couple weeks to get there.
that makes sense.
So, and then that'll buy them the time to actually, like, in their heads, I'm sure they're hoping, like, and then we can sort of, if they trot it out 2-3 weeks, so now we're into late June before the rest of the army gets released, but everybody who wanted it still has their little special box. They got their book, they got units they can be painting, they feel good. That gives them time in the interim to catch back up, is I would assume what they're hoping. But they've got like 2 boxes cooking right now, waiting to go out between that big Lumineth box and Engine War.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The Adeptus Mechanicus box.
Yep.
Whatever that is.
So this is pure speculation. So we know on the 23rd that we have an announcement thing, right? We know that we have like a
they said
preview
stay
show.
tuned for the 23rd. We're doing something.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll probably another preview show on the 23rd. I'm predicting that we'll have pre-orders go live the following week. So on the 29th. And then which would arguably like shipping then would either happen on the 5th, or if they say it'll start shipping within the next 2 weeks, it would be between the 5th and the 12th of June is when I would be if I were to guess from a logistics standpoint when those things start moving. That's probably those are the dates that I would look for.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, time will tell. See what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And you better get your pre-orders in because that box is going to move quick.
I'm
the
sure.
Lumineth box. And then we had the Old World article.
Mm-hmm. You're laughing because in the notes I just wrote Old World : Dub Airs, and that's all I wrote. Yes.
Yeah, you did, and I laughed.
Mm-hmm.
Dub Airs.
Dub Airs.
Yeah, so we have Kislev Ice Cavalry.
Yep, they're bears. Cool.
They remind me of back when I was a younger man and I used to go to bars a lot. There was this special piece of like marketing stuff, like you got neon signs and all kinds of stuff like that in bars.
Sure.
There used to be this big light up sign for Rumpelmints, which was a very high proof mint or whatever type of schnapps. And it had like this warrior woman astride a giant bear, and she was wearing like one of those, it's like an armored bra, not a hell of a lot else kind of a situation. I always thought I would think that she would be cold because it was wintry, and stuff like that. But that bear, when I saw that the kind of pencil drawing sort of thing, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly where my mind went back to.
Yep, absolutely. That's very funny. I remember that exact thing you're talking about. I grew up, my father owned a restaurant and a bar, and I grew up, around there, and I remember that exact thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. All right, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about it. It's still years away. It was Bears, cool. Bear Cavalry's cool.
You know what I'm going to
Great.
laugh about? Is if the old world is 15 millimeter.
It's entirely possible that it could be a different type of game or anything like that. I wouldn't get my hopes up for anything. I would just read a thing and go, that's some neat art, and we all continue along on Mr. Toad's wild ride here.
What if it was 54 millimeter?
Sure, Inquisitor 2. This time it's going to work. But still full army scale.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like-
exactly. Yeah.
It's just massive.
You have
The
to play on
table
a
you play
20 foot by 30 foot table.
on.
Yeah, driveways.
Yeah.
They're called driveways.
Mhm. Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I still don't know what to think about the old world.
I'll
I'm
continue
mixed on it.
reading the articles, and when stuff happens, I'll check that out too.
Yeah.
Awesome. I am neither negative nor positive. I am neutral. That's what
Cautiously
Yeah.
neutral.
I am. Cautiously
Yeah, I mean,
neutral. I don't know
I'm
enough
in
to
a
be
very-
anything.
Right. I'm in a very similar position. Like, I'm like, well, I'm open to it. Like, we can see. I'm not rebasing anything. So if it is the same scale and the same stuff, like if it's just creating a home for all of our old models plus new releases, I'm like, if this is where Legends, like the end game of Legends is like we're back to square bases with all these models. I'm gonna be pretty mixed.
They could honestly do what
A Song of Fire and Ice.
No, well, yeah, that too. But I was also going to say Conquest, Last Argument of Kings.
Yeah.
Like that game is also a rank and flank style game, but the models come on round bases and they go into the little
Square
rectangles. And then the thing that I think is interesting about Conquest is that they're now coming out with the skirmish games where you just take those same models out of the square things and there you go. That would be a smart idea, honestly, on GW's part. If they were going to go down that road, I think it might be a bad idea.
Yeah. I have no idea why. I mean, I don't want to get into too deep of speculation. Who knows? It could be anything. It could be a boat. I don't know. So, as I said, cautiously neutral. As cool. I like bears. I always like Kislev. So cool. Good stuff there. Excited.
You have my attention.
Sure.
Speaking of attention, something else dropped this week. Soulbound dropped this week.
Yeah, Soulbound, the AOS RPG came out. Which is I spent a lot of time cracking into that.
Has consumed Vince is what we might say.
Got sucked down that rabbit hole real hard. Got the book on Thursday, and then proceeded to grind it for the next day. Decide that I didn't like the existing character sheet and all the math. So then I spent the next day writing my own Excel-based auto-calculating character sheet. Shared it out there. Somebody enriched it. And then since then, I've also been doing some additional work, adding in some new stuff. So down in the description of this video, this will be my pick of the week. So I'll just transition right here because I think this is our last news item.
Yep.
Down in the description of this video, you will find a link to the updated character sheet. It auto flows all the calculations for you. It's locked. So if you download just the Excel file, like don't use it in Dropbox, or I don't think the locking works and you can screw up calculations. If you download the file, I've protected the sheet, and you can only select the cells where you're supposed to enter information. Everything auto flows and calculates. You can choose your talents, you can choose your spells, and if you're interested, and you feel like you want to get a little crazy, if you want to get nuts, I added rules in for species rules of my own design.
Of our design.
Design. Yes, Tom and I got together and cracked out species rules for more or less everybody. So Skaven and Oryx and Gits and all that kind of stuff. Ogres. So if you're wanting to play other races, we made up a new species rule for all of them. Malignants. Yes, if you want to play Ghosty Boys. That's the one I'm very curious about, and I find people will often probably not allow people to play. But you'll have to tell me whether or not you think we got Malignants right. We had a lot of conversation about playing Ghosty Boys. and what are the appropriate restrictions on playing a ghost. And I also added in 2 new spell lores. Those took a lot longer to write. So I wrote in the lore for Skaven, and I wrote in the lore for Gloomspite Gitz. Using their own system, by the way. They have a sort of mathematical system which you can like roughly use. It's not perfect if you're kind of wanting unusual effects, but I tried to hew as close to, like I followed their formula and then kind of did my own judgment from there. I will tell you I erred on the side of making the casting value more difficult if it was kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I always erred up. So if those spells are a little harder to cast for the Skaven or whatever, yep, sorry, that's because I made them and I'm not official, so I'm not the one who's going to like sit there.
You're going to make them more difficult.
Yeah, I don't want to make cheap house spells that are just like, oh, this is the broken stuff, right? I tried to make it all very balanced. So, at any rate, it's all there. You can use that new stuff or not. But yeah, there you go. It's all there. So it's down in the description. Check it out. Cool.
Yeah.
Adam, have you checked out any? Did you look at like Wrath and Glory at all, or have you looked at the new Soulbound RPG at all?
Not particularly. I'm not a huge RPG guy. I looked a tiny bit at Wrath and Glory when it first came out by the first company that was handling it.
Right, before Cubicle 7. Yeah.
The Seas or something like that, I think.
Something like that.
And I think it was Gen Con a couple of years back. I was kind of staying in their booth looking through the book, and it was a lovely book and everything, but I haven't really looked too into it. And I did see when Cubicle 7 was taking that game over and also doing Soulbound. I thought that was probably a pretty good fit, I think, on that part, just from the what I know of Cubicle 7. But yeah, I don't know a ton about the actual RPG itself in either situation.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's cool. I like it. So we'll do a show on it sometime soon. So there you go. That's all I have to say about that. So if you want help, if you want an easy tool to build characters with, you can just plug your numbers in and go from there, and everything you can select. I will tell you, by the by, obviously, I'll be very clear about something. You still need to purchase the game product. Okay?
Yes.
Because the character sheet does not actually give you all the rules. It gives you like the selection, like here's the spell, and it gives you the high level stuff of that, but you have no idea what that spell does unless you own the book and can go look at the spell. Right? It just has like basic numbers. Think of it like
you still have to go buy the product. Correct. And we encourage you to do so.
Yes. It's just like War Scroll Builder is basically what I was trying to make, right? Or anything like that, where you can get War Scroll Builder and you can build your army, but unless you have the book or the cards or the scrolls or something, you don't know what anything does, right? Because it's just a thing with some points and a few numbers. So there you go. Okay, cool. Don't want Cubicle 7 hunting me down, thinking I'm giving away all their rules for free. I'm certainly not. All right, cool. I've already gone down this road before, trying to avoid any future cease and desist letters. All right, so pick of the week, Adam. What would you like to share?
Well, I would, I think probably, and it's not exactly Age of Sigmar related per se.
Perfectly fine.
It is definitely for folks who do kind of, who are into kit bashing and who do like the, we mentioned, Inquisitor a little bit earlier when we were joking about 54 millimeter scale. There's a lot of people out there who are getting into kit bashing, and it's kind of called like Inquisimunda or Inquisimunda 28 or that kind of thing. And there's not a rule set per se that like kind of a lot of people agree on and that kind of stuff. These people use this group, these people, it's all that kind of stuff. And a guy from the UK named Nick made a game called Planet 28, which is a very simple 16-page PDF that is a simple skirmish kind of style game for using your Inquisimunda style, 28 miniatures. And it is, you make your own characters. There's no classes. There's no army lists. It's very narrative, but you still have points, so you can have 2 equal forces, but it's also designed to be very narrative but not so crazy storyline, like Inquisimunda, or the original Inquisitor, you were technically supposed to have a GM when you played that game.
Right.
There was supposed to be a game master, which is in a lot of situations different. But it's a cool little PDF you can get for. I mean, it's one of those things you can get from like Drive Through RPG or War Games downloads or one of those places, War Games Vault, I think. But it's one of those where you pay what you want. I mean, you can download it for free, but you can also give them a couple of bucks and everything like that. And it's like I said, I love also, it's all black and white. It's kind of old school. He did all the artwork. The artwork reminds me a ton of like old GW, like Rogue Trader style of stuff, little illustrations, even a little bit of like old D&D. And so I think my next battle report, actually, because he's also now released add-on rules for it that are for solo play, and so I can't still yet have really people too much into the studio. So my next battle report is going to be done as a solo game using that. So yeah, it's called Planet 28, and it's a lot of fun. I really like it.
Nice. That's awesome. That's super cool. I like the Inquisition 28 does have like an AOS equivalent too, like AOS 28.
Yes.
Also, so like that whole movement is pretty awesome. Like just the kit bashes that come out of that whole movement are mind-boggling.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Like if I'm sure you guys have seen 28 magazine.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like the stuff in that is like that's what kind of really got me interested in it.
Right.
And that's what. Like I found a copy of Inquisitor at my local game shop, actually, that had been sitting on the shelf since 2002.
Nice.
And so I picked that up because I'm like, I'm never going to play it, but I definitely want to look through it and all that kind of stuff and everything. And so yeah, it's gotten me interested. I've done now 4 different war bands that have all been kit bashed, mostly Necromunda stuff and AdMech and Genestealer cults with different head swaps from different companies and all kinds of junk like that. But I've been really enjoying all that stuff.
Nice. Well, certainly the solo play element of it is a popular design element in these times. So yes, absolutely. Tom, what about you? Which pick?
I am going to pick honest wargamer Rob Symes, friend of the show. They did a Lumineth breakdown of all the Lumineth news. We kind of blew through it pretty quickly. They spent 2 hours on it. And so I would encourage you to check it out if you're interested in all things Lumineth.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, that explains why we spent the amount of time we did on it. He already covered it all. You can only trod the same ground. So there you go.
Totally. Yep. Makes sense.
All right, gentlemen, let's talk about some hobby time. So, Adam, what have you been working on? I know part of it because I got photos. Would you like me to bring those up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rock on.
Like I said, I've been doing a lot of these war bands for both Planet 28 and a couple of little kind of different indie skirmish games that I like. And I've been doing a lot of enamel washes. I've been using AK Interactive Streaking Grime and really loving it. The issue I'm finding, honestly, at this point is I don't want to be the guy who only uses that one technique.
Sure.
I can definitely see myself going down that road. So the next couple of things that I paint model wise, I have to try not to use it, but it's just so like, you just completely ham fist, very simple paint job, and then airbrush the hell out of it with AK Interactive Streaking Grime. Let it sit for like 3 minutes, kind of clean out your airbrush a little bit while you're waiting, and then just take an old piece of t-shirt and just start wiping it away. And it looks so amazing so quickly that I don't know. There's something about it I just really like. So, I mean, it doesn't work for everything. It's not going to probably work for your Lumineth because they should look, clean generally. But when you're trying to make like grungy sort of Necromunda, kind of style, weird gangers and stuff like that, it works out so well. But then I'm starting to get more into this game, into Warcry. So I attacked the terrain. I built it all like last week. And then sometime early last week, I primed a good portion of it. I primed the rest of the stone stuff on Wednesday or Thursday, made a video about it, talked about priming outside and all that kind of stuff. Since then, I've painted up pretty much all the stone stuff here. And I just need to go back in and just do a couple of touch-ups here and there. And then the wood stuff is all, I didn't take any pictures of that, but the wooden stuff like the pointy.
The spikes and stuff.
The spikes and the barricades and all that jazz. That stuff is probably at least half done, if not 3/4. So
I call that basing material.
Yeah. No, it is. It is kind of crazy, like that stuff, but it's so pointy. You know what I mean? There's so many times I've been
so like, so sharp. Yes.
Yeah. But it looks cool. I mean, I like the stone stuff better.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Really?
But, yeah.
Oh man, I love the wood pieces that they had on theirs, because like I use contrast for the wood. Like all the other stuff, I use all my normal techniques, but I wanted to really like lean into the contrast. So I used the contrast for the wood, and actually like between that and then like some dry brushing and like a black oil wash, like it finished it beautifully.
The wood parts on these stone bits, I like these parts. Don't get me wrong, but and I did the exact same thing. I used I either used the gore, whatever,
the gore grunta, or
it's either that or the wildwood. I used one of the two, and I've been really loving contrast for terrain. Honestly, it's
it's just the spiky wood bits. Like I like the wood on here, and you can build that, and there's lots of nice elements that go on the walls.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got up on screen right now. I'll go ahead and minimize that, and we'll go back to everybody's face, But like the extra barricades and stuff, I'm just like, nah, I'm good. I honestly just put them all in a big bag, and I cut them up and use them as basing bits. Yeah, just like trees or fallen rock or lumber, or little cool spikes on bigger bases, or just little interesting elements. I used a bunch on my Seraphon because I was like, oh, cool, wooden spikes with like skulls put into them. That seems like what crazy jungle lizards would do, right? That feels very like that. So yeah. I don't know what I'm going to get out of that being on the table, right?
Yeah, I mean, I went online and watched a couple of videos from people about like how to build the terrain so that it best matches the cards and all that kind of stuff. Because there's so many different ways. If you followed the instructions, all of a sudden you're like, well, now I've painted myself into a hole. So I follow that stuff and everything. So I guess I in this situation I sort of wanted to follow the rules a little bit more, and at least to start, and then see where it goes from there. So yeah, but I don't know. There's been a lot of terrain that they've put out that's been great. There's been some pieces that have been kind of sketchy. Like the Ophidian Archway is still not great.
All-time sketchiness. Yes.
Yeah. But they also made years ago for 40K. They made this like crashed. Like I don't know what it was. It was supposed to be like. Not the Aquila Lander or whatever, but it was some other piece that was supposed to be like a crashed ship, and they showed it off, and people were like, wow, that's awesome. And then when it showed up, it was just completely soft. Like there was no detail to it. It looked like it had been vacuum formed over the original design. It was just really bad. But otherwise, like I've liked everything I've made, and these, were fun to build. So yeah.
I still have the really old one, and it shows up on my table sometimes. I remember like the crashed, hollowed out rhino bunker. Where it was like half a rhino and then the sandbag bunker built around it. Yeah, that still frequently makes an appearance on my table. I've had that thing for like, 20 plus years now. So yeah. All right, Tommy, what about you, man? Your hobby table's clean. What are you working on?
Nothing. Like I just completely stalled out, and so part of like there's like the color explosion that was my gets. Was great, but like it's just doing all the processes on the Loon Shrine like literally almost drove me insane. Like it was just because I free-handed every mushroom, and there's like 117 mushrooms or something like that on the actual Loon Shrine, and so I'm literally down to like just the cages, like the hanging cages, and the really tiny mushrooms there. That's it. Everything else is done.
You gotta settle in, my dude.
I just can't do it. Like I'm trying. And so like I went and cleaned everything and like got everything prepped, and I have a bunch of stuff that I need to like work on like I'll get there.
No, that explains the cleaning. Now everything comes together. Now we've got the final piece of the puzzle. This is what we call procrastination cleaning. I know I should be hobbying, but instead I'll clean up stuff. Yes.
Yep.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've literally never had that situation. I don't think. No.
Well, you might be immune to this particular strain of of hobby whatever. But I this is something I've seen many people do where they'll be like, I suppose I could work on that thing. I'll just clean up or something instead. This thing looks messy over here. Let me just organize some bits. I've been needing to clip these bits for a while. Let me just get that done, or whatever. Any excuse like that. Yes. For myself, you mentioned Necromunda earlier. Necromunda continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. I myself put together a battle mage out of the Necromunda girl and like an old elvish. I think that's an elf arm. That's what that probably is. And the head from one of the Sisters of Silence, I think. So that's my battle mage for my Whirlwinds army. And then I'm also working on my Knight Azeros, which I'm using that special character girl that was the store exclusive. I think this is the one that you gave me, Tom. All right.
Yep.
I'm using her plus Saint Celestine's wings, and then like a random lantern bit I found, and a power sword from 40k, which seems absolutely appropriate. So, yeah, there you go. So that's going to be my Knight Azeros, and she's almost done. She just needs to get like all the medals and stuff done. So
the Necromunda kits. I mean, I should actually sit down sometime and actually try to play Necromunda, maybe. But I think I own all of the kits that they've put out for it. I mean, like I've got it, and I think I've got 2 boxes of Vansar because I use those models all the time.
Sure.
But yeah, like the majority of those warbands that I've been building recently have been, Orlok, Kador, or Cador, or whatever, Cador, all those different, groups and mixing that stuff together with stuff from Gene Stealer cults. And those boxes are just awesome.
Well, that's just it. They work perfectly for anything. They're great for all the games you're mentioning where you're kit bashing your own stuff. They're good for 40k. They're obviously good for Necromunda. They're great for AOS because so many of those gangs look super low tech. Like, yeah, some of them are kind of out of the picture, but like a bunch of them look like they would. I'm not gonna. No, I've seen people use even like the Palatine Enforcers or whatever and had them look really cool because they just look like armored dudes. But a lot of that stuff.
Cador guys look medieval almost. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes.
So you just got to swap out and give them some swords instead of guns.
Yep. Exactly. So I mean, it's such an amazing set of kits for conversions for anything, and most of them tend to be, you can usually like swap the pieces you need to as well. Like a lot of them are pretty fluid. Like it's easy to do a head swap. It's easy to switch arms around, like that kind of stuff. Even though some of the bodies build a little weird, but for the most part, the arms and heads are pretty interchangeable. So that's cool. So there you go. All right, cool. Well, gentlemen, shall we talk about some Warcry?
Sounds great.
All right. So, Adam, I want to start with you over here. You've been getting into the Warcry lately.
Yeah.
So, at like high level, what's your experience with the game? What do you like about it? What do you think of its nature as a gateway game? I know that's something you talk about a lot. Like what do you think of its nature as that kind of thing? Just give us sort of your overview, your feelings on it right now.
I think that when it first was released and I started reading through the rules and I started watching some battle reports and things like that, I thought to myself, initially I thought this is really like a simple kind of game and I'm a little concerned about that. But it's kind of like when Age of Sigmar first came out and people were like, well, this game, it's only 4 pages rules now. That's not even a thing. You can't do that. And then started to understand where a lot of the strategy comes more from placement and location and things that you can't necessarily put in the rules. Like they're there, but you can't, you know what I mean? So I started to see that. And also I started to see as well that game is designed to be more of obviously more of a campaign sort of a situation. So if each campaign game takes 2 hours, well, you're not going to get real far in the campaign, so that's a situation as well. But I am looking at it honestly as a kind of a gateway game. I do want to, like I said, I'm nearly finished with the terrain, and then I've got my bird boys, the Corvus Cabal. They are partially built. I was building them not last time you and I got together at Sam's, but the time before that, and then realized about halfway through that I had screwed up all the bases because all of a sudden they made 28 millimeter bases in there.
Yes.
That was a hoot. So I've got to fix that a little bit, and then I'm going to do iron golems because I think they're really cool looking. The other guys that come in the box, which I think is the
Untamed Beasts.
Yeah, those guys I'm going to wait a while on.
Sure.
They're not bad, but I'm like, I think that the iron golems are very interesting to me. The bird guys are interesting to me, and then I want to add. I have the box I brought it upstairs. I want to add these folks.
Sure, some ghosty boys. Tom was praising that Night Haunt box recently.
Yeah. And then I'm also going to hopefully throw in a bunch of the Maggot King of Nurgle kind of a situation, and I might even do some down the road. Do some Stormcast. I don't know, and you guys may know this better. I've been hearing online that the normal Age of Sigmar armies are way more powerful than the standard Warcry armies. Is there any truth to that?
I mean, in my experience, so one of my regular opponents plays the Corvus Cabal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the regular armies, quote unquote, like, existing armies, like the non-special chaos factions, often like spike a lot higher. They can build more sort of elite forces of bigger troops and stuff like that. Because, you look at like the Iron Golems, they've got like one big sort of bruiser or whatever. But there are a lot of armies where they have much more of a mix of like very low value cheap troops and very high power bruisers, and you can kind of mix more like that. So like that is a level of versatility that not necessarily all of the Chaos Warbands have, but I don't know that like I would necessarily say they're like across the board worse. I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
How I would frame it is that I think that the classic armies in most instances can specialize their forces better. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at, like, and I think Vince was kind of getting at this, like, you could have a number of centerpiece models. Like, I could run a Skaven Warband with 2 Storm Fiends, which are just going to wreck shop, and then a bunch of small stuff. And so I still have bodies, I still have mobility, I still have objective grabbing, but I also have 2 pieces that can literally just go hog wild,
right,
and go head to head with anything in the game. If you choose Cypher Lords, you just don't have that. You don't have these big centerpiece bruisers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the challenge. What I would argue is that depending on if you get into the narrative stuff where you can bring in some heroes, that can resolve some of it. But in general, like that's where the disparity is going to be, is on those high, like having Kurnoth hunters on the table, right? Or having these kind of like 200, the numbers normally around the 200 to 250 point models.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just not a lot of those in the Warcry Chaos Warband boxes.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can certainly, like, I think that the honest answer is if you're going to build one of the regular, or I don't know what you want to call them, the Chaos specific, Warcry specific, I don't know, whatever we want to call them, warbands, right? That you should get more than one box, because that does help you a lot to cover that distance. Like, if you try to take just like the stock team or something, and run it against somebody who, like, well, I had my whole army to pick from, right? And you only had like the 9 things that came in the box. Well, yeah, often there'll be a power disparity, but I'm not sure that's that surprising, right? Like, yeah, you had a choice of 30 things and got to pick the best stuff. I just used these 9. Now, if I bought a couple boxes of Iron Golems or whatever, pick your thing there, right? Sure. You could have a much different situation on your hands, right?
But now you're $150 into your warband,
right? Sure. And that's the thing. Like, as a gateway game, and from what I understand, and again, I'm not a Blood Bowl player, but I've also heard plenty of times with Blood Bowl, it's like, well, the box that they sell with the team doesn't make a full team, or doesn't make a good team, or doesn't doesn't make a competitive team. You got to buy 2 boxes. And like, that's also becomes then, well, it becomes a difficult gateway if you're trying to make a gateway game that you can also kind of wreck shop on a lot. If you just want to have a good time and play some games, then it doesn't matter as much.
Right.
But there are different types of people for different types of games, and that's where I think that I get the feeling sometimes the way it's designed is like, if you want to be competitive in this kind of small skirmish game, you need to buy more stuff so that you can build your army a little bit differently. The other issue, though, is then if you buy 2 boxes, let's say, of Iron Golems or the Corvus Cabal, those models then look very much alike when you start doubling up. You know what I mean? And then to me, aesthetically, that bothers me a little bit as well. So
you have to do some heavy conversion, like in order to really like let that go the full way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
what I'll say is my feeling on it as Gateway is it's certainly like the big advantage is because Underworlds is the other one I was pointed to, right, as the gateway for AOS, like Warhammer Underworlds. Because the advantage there is you buy the thing, you get the cards. Yeah,
that's it.
And that's it. It's the thing you put together. This is what you play with. They're, push to fit. You don't even have to paint them, right? It just, there you go. So I'll agree it's not that easy, but flip side, here's an argument I would make.
Mm-hmm.
With Underworlds, other players you run into who maybe play AOS, like let's say you're getting into to Underworlds and you want to go find some games, right? You have to find other Underworlds players, and that's going to be like some restricted set of people, right? But you can tell anybody, like you can show up at the shop and anyone who has AOS models now at this point, since they've released cards for basically every army, you can be like, hey, I want to play some Warcry. Most people are going to know it exists. And as long as you've got like cards or the book that has all the cards in it, you can be like, here, hey, you've got an army, just grab, 10 figs out of your army and we can play a game, right? And it is fast. So your pool of potential opponents, I think, is a lot larger.
I feel like that Warcry sits like if you've got the absolute starter person, I would say that probably Underworlds is what brings them into the yard a little bit more, and Warcry is a little bit further along that scale with the old world being on the end of that scale, I guess, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah, but I do agree. There is a definite, like, it's great that you can take your warbands from Underworld and bring them into Age of Sigmar. That's like a nice added, value add or whatever. But you're right. If you want to say, hey, I want you to play Warcry with me, you've got a bunch of these guys. Those are all part of Warcry. Bring them in and we'll play. That's a cool feature as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that on the flip side, I think that my experience has been with our kids, at least, that like Underworlds is a much bigger ask for them to master and understand than Warcry. Like I can sit down with my 9-year-olds and like I can pound out a game in 20 minutes of Warcry, 25 minutes, a full game. No questions, because it's all numbers and dice and models. Like the basic core rules are very simple. There's no reading. There's no tactics of like when to play what cards, understanding the entire deck. There's no deck building aspect. And so it's interesting because I think Underworlds draws into the orbit a certain type of player. It brings in your X-Wing players and those types. But I think Warcry is actually tapping into arguably a much younger audience that can jump on and learn real quick.
That's true. I think the only issue is that the buy-in for that younger audience is more difficult with Warcry to some degree, like especially if they want to have terrain and all that other jazz.
Sure.
If you want to get into Underworlds, it's $70 and you've got now 2 armies and the board and the dice and all that jazz. That's a benefit, but you're right though. I would say Warcry is its potential. I think it's an easier game to some degree just because there's not the card mechanic and all the combos and the deck building and all that stuff. Right. At our local shop, what that brought in to that group was, like you mentioned, X-Wing, but also just straight up Magic players.
Right.
Yeah. They're Magic players that were like, hey, this is like, I don't have to paint these guys. They're already in colored plastic. They're easy enough to push together. And I've got this game that gives me my deck building, itch and all that kind of stuff. And it works out real nice. So, but I think that I'm not going to generally play competitively, so I'm not super concerned about that. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure I don't accidentally if I'm trying to teach somebody new, give them the Corvus Cabal and then bring in, Stormcast and then accidentally squish them. I mean, technically, if the points match up, aren't they supposed to be the same amount of power? Isn't that how that's supposed to work?
Sure, that's exactly how it always works every
Yeah.
time
In a perfect world. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, maybe is what I would say, because
I would say probably not, but yeah.
Yeah, like the one aside before we move on from Underworld, like in the parallel there, the one aside I do want to point out is that actually there's a really interesting, like, so what I found in trying to build a bunch of warbands, for our family to play around with, is that Underworlds actually becomes like a wonderful vehicle for warband building. Because like I bought the Gloomspite box, the Gloomspite Gits box, which is a bunch of hoppers. It's a bunch of hoppers. It's a bunch of knights, and so you can build them kind of any way you want. But I needed like Gits on foot, and I was like, well, I kind of want some. Kind of want some actual like squigs, and like what do I need to do? And so I was like looking, and I'm like, oh man, I have to buy this box and that box. And then I looked at it, and I was like, or I can just buy an Underworlds box and get everything that I need, because there's a smattering of like a bunch of the characters. The different stuff. I have a netter. I have a prodder. I have some hoppers. I have or not hoppers. I have some normal squigs. So I actually have a sampling of models without having to invest $150 in boxes.
Right.
And so this really funny thing is that I have begun buying Underworlds kits again to supply Warcry warbands.
Sure.
Because they're just an easy source of a diversity of models without having to own like an entire like kits for those different armies.
Yep, makes sense. All right, so you had mentioned one thing I want to drill in on. Okay, so there's lots of individual stuff to cover here, and obviously we're not going to go like every warband beat by beat. We're going to be here until next Wednesday if we do that. But I think there's some meta elements like I want to start in before we get into that, which is like the terrain. So most of the games that I play, just like my regular games of AOS, are multiplayer games. So most of my games aren't one-on-one. We're usually playing with at least 3 people, sometimes 4. Okay. So we'll do the old take 2. Like if we play with 4 people, we'll do the old take 2 boards and put them together thing. Kind of, just to have the space. So we're not all like literally right on top of each other right away. If we do 3 people, we actually usually just stick with 1 board. And I still like with my terrain, I built out a couple of pieces of my terrain to be taller. Like I went and added in extra bits to them so they were even taller than normal, so you could fall from significant heights and actually get really injured and stuff like that. And it does have a noticeable impact on the game because, like you mentioned, the Corvus Cabal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they have dudes who can, want to get up high and want to leap down on people. They have dudes who can like fly, or any army that has people who can fly and sort of ignore that stuff. You had your Night Haunt box, and that's another member of my group has Night Haunt, so he plays his Night Haunt when we do that. And like when I'm running
Iron Jaws.
Yeah, when I'm running my Iron Jaws and we have a couple tall pieces on the board, and they go Gits, they're like way up here on something that's like 10 inches high. I'm like,
and you're like, nope, I can't get there by the end of the game.
Right. I'm just like,
right, yeah.
Hi. Okay, bye. Just like there's nothing I can do. So it actually makes it it's sort of an interesting element to add that verticality. So what kind of terrain have you been using? Have you been liking, Adam? Like, have you been using the standard terrain setups? Like, do you flip a card and set that up, or what do you do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm like playing and because I'm the relatively new sort of initial setup. Mm-hmm. It's all about trying to play with the like I mentioned earlier. I followed some tutorials and whatnot to make sure that I was building it the right way so that it was as modular as it could be, and still follow the. It was very interesting to me again. Like as I started like looking into this, I'm like, so there's very specific diagrams on the cards of the way that the terrain should be, but they really only show you how to build 2 of those stone buildings and then just figure out the other ones on yourself, kind of. And you're like, well, that's really kind of confusing. So, and then also that, they're telling you, well, glue this part into this part, but then later on we're going to show it stuck to this thing. So I'm like, yeah, it was interesting. But if you're thinking about getting into Warcry, I would definitely tell you to go out and look around a little bit and find out how to build that stuff to keep it more modular. But I am definitely sticking with that style, and I at this point it's been basically just 2-player games, partially just because of it's me and my wife, so with quarantine and all that stuff. So there's that. Yeah,
nice. Tom, what about you? How you setting up terrain?
We're flipping cards.
Okay.
Like literally. So here's images of like how so for us, like obviously we have not finished that battle report because my son's 9 and has an attention of a 9-year-old. But for this, like we just literally flip the cards, lay stuff out, and then run from there.
Gotcha.
And so like we are much like Adam, I'm keeping it super like rigid. And so we're doing this and I'm painting up the Soul Drain Forest, which is the terrain box, and I'll have like all the terrain from that and all of that stuff painted. And so I'm using it as inspiration to just go and paint and prepare the stuff. So like I want to run that other terrain box, and so I'm using that as the impetus to go and like spend the time, paint up all the terrain, get it all beautiful, and then now we can roll that out with the new cards and the new stuff and everything that rolls with it. And so I just love the simplicity and the ease. Like, don't get me wrong, I love building boards with Mordheim, and I certainly have the terrain to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also recognize the types of games that like the terrain itself is a balancing factor. It's the same reason why like I would love to do like 24 by 24 boards, right?
Sure.
Like or 48 by 48, like full boards. But the fact is that like you play on something like that, Iron Jaws are moving at 3 inches per activation. Even in a 5-turn game, they're not getting across the table without terrain.
Well, I mean, any good Iron Jaws player is certainly using their cards to punch their movement up, or their dice to punch their movement up. But I take your meaning.
Right. And so I've tried to stick to the actual core mechanics that have been presented because I don't want to create a bunch of other like secondary and tertiary consequences.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, we're flipping cards and playing the terrain right out of the box. So
clearly I have a problem with authority. I'm not listening to you, cards. You don't know me. You can't tell me what to do, cards. Yeah, because we just like generally when we sit around, we'll just say, okay, I'll put one here, and then somebody else will go like, cool, I want to have this thing here, and then we don't know who's taking what side. Like that's predetermining, anything else, and then we just use the rest of the cards because I do like the rest of it. Like I love being able to determine scenario and stuff like that, right? And if it takes more players, we just kind of and we have stuff that won't work for multiplayer. We'll just like make it work usually. Like, well, let's just add a third starting point because most of them have some kind of logic to it. So you can say like, all right, you'll be kind of here, and then your second will be here, and your third will be here, or whatever. But there are obviously multiplayer scenarios in there too. So yeah, I don't know. It's just how I roll, I guess. I'm a rebel. That's what I'm saying. I'm a rebel. All right. So Adam, what you mentioned the warbands you're looking into. What is it about those warbands that made you want to collect them? Like, what do you like about them?
Well, I mean, the Corvus Cabal, I just think are great sculpts. I like crows, so I don't know if that helps. I'm not sure.
I think aesthetics is a huge part of this.
Yeah, well, because I got to be honest, a lot of the other Warcry bands, I just don't know. No, thank you. I mean, like that weird with the unmade and the weird with the weird face plate thing going on. Not the
Cypher Lords.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. It's just like it. I mean, and it's standard. It's the way that Games Workshop has been doing things for a long time, where they have people, and they know this obviously at this point. They have people who like certain types of aesthetics, so they just make both kinds.
Right.
So you've got your iron golems, which are basically like nearly corn almost, but also a little bit space marine-y because they got big weird round helmets and junk like that. And then you've got like your unmade and which are nearly Lumineth almost, except with a lot more flayed skin, but like otherwise it's that just the tall, skinny, sort of weird,
flowing robes. Yeah,
exactly, all that stuff. So they've got people who enjoy both of those different aesthetics. Some people say I love this and I hate the other one, and vice versa. So they just play to both, which is a smart move. Car manufacturers do it, clothing manufacturers. Like anyway, so for me, those two are interesting. And then as far as the like, I've always been a Rotbringer kind of Maggotkin sort of fan. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, not a Nurgling fan so much, but
right.
So
I get that.
I have a lot of models too. So I definitely want to just be able to use that. And then with the Night Haunts, I mean, my plan, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, Vince, my plan is that hopefully it, lockdown willing, at the end of, well, in like November or late October, there's a tournament that potentially Sam and I will be teams at. We'll be a team, and I would be bringing Night Haunts to that, like 1,000 points of Night Haunts. So I see these Night Haunts as basically more like not an additive to that, but more of like a test run as far as paint scheme and stuff like that.
Sure.
And plus the models, I just love the Night Haunt models. That's the thing that's interesting to me, is that when I look at the Night Haunts, I can't think of a model that I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't run that because it's ugly. You know what I mean? Like everything in that entire army. Like that black coach is scary to build. It's going to be a bear, but it's going to be amazing when it's done. So,
it's a joy to paint. It was one of my favorite paint experiences that I've ever had. Like, it was truly a joy to paint.
It's going to change my life, I think, just because it's going to be like such a big project. I mean, it may change my DNA. I don't know. It's going to be like just looking at all the parts and looking at it. And immediately my first thought was like, well, what if I had it so it was actually coming downhill and I built up a thing, and then I'm like, that's so it's going to be a big one, but it's going to be probably that army is going to be a summer, early fall project. So
sure. No, and it's funny because I think, and Tom, I'm interested to get your take on like what the warbands you've been playing and how your kids have chosen warbands too, because I know you've been getting games in with your son, as you mentioned. For me, the warbands I want to run, I looked at, like, I literally would just flip through the cards and think, what of these looks cool of the models I can use, right? When I say the cards, I don't mean like the individual cards. I mean like the army card, right, that has your abilities on one side and the units on the other. Yeah. And I would say, like, okay, just looking at literally the thing with the least amount of information, which is the side of the card that just literally says this is the available units for this army, and it matches. Everybody knows what I'm talking about here, right? Yeah. Like, okay, the flip side of your dice activations.
Is it this thing?
Yes. Exactly. I just look at that side and I go, which one of these has the units I think are cool, right? And that's been mostly I picked, because I looked at like the goblins. I was like, oh man, these guys are awesome. Look at all this cool stuff you could get in goblins. And then I'm like, all right, I like all these dudes. And then I went and looked, and I looked at the cards, and I was like, yeah, okay, these seem like they're fun things. I really like goblins. I like it when I can have both things. Like, I like to have big dudes. I like to have little dudes. I like variants in my stuff. So, like, my favorite forces are like the Gits, are Skaven, anything where you can have like some big dudes and little dudes. I like little weedy guys with like a couple big brothers following them around. That's what I enjoy in my own personal aesthetic.
What I really love about the Maggotkin is that it's basically just Blight Lords, which I already have a bunch of, and I have another box to build, and then it's the big flying bug dudes who I was like, I've always wanted to build them, but I'm like, I don't know if but now I'm definitely gonna, so I'm really super excited about that. So yeah, I like that this is the entire army. I think that's kind of cool for these guys. Not everybody does that. Some of them have a whole bunch of pieces, but the fact that these guys are basically just literally 2 units, I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, and also, like, that is one of the biggest, heaviest, scariest units in the game, as far as like raw size and power goes. Not plague drones.
The Blight Lords.
Thank you. Puskoil Blight Lords. Yes, yep. The name just would not come to the front of my brain. Like, those dudes are crazy tough and huge for what they are.
Wrecking balls.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that thing flies. Like, just as a quick aside, I think we can all agree that flight is like a very, as per always, flight is good in the normal game. Flight in Warcry, especially if you're crazy like me with terrain, but even without it, flight is just so potent as to what it does.
I won our first like recorded like pod, like the thing we're gonna turn into a battle report, because I had
won against your son. Yes, you beat down your 9-year-old.
Yeah, you need to understand. Going into turn 3, like the end of turn 2, he had the game.
Sure.
It was the game where you have 3 objectives, and then you remove one at the end of 2.
Yeah.
Or at the end of 1, and then you remove one at the end of 2, and then whatever one's left is whoever has it wins. And the reality is he got to pick first, so we both claimed one. The middle wasn't contested. He grabbed it. And so what ended up happening was he won the roll off, so he got to remove mine. And so going into turn 2, he had all the objectives, and I was playing Daughters of Cain against Ironjaws. So like I have a bunch of like weak hits against toughness 5 stuff,
Sure.
with like mountains of hit points. But the advantage is that like it's because I had like 2 harpies, and what I was able to do was like dump all of my attacks finally into the one. Into his like brute that was carrying the one objective that was going to be remaining, and then I double moved across it with a 12-inch move on a harpy, right. So like 24 inches, and literally just like swooped out, grabbed it, and then moved back behind my lines. And so like flying such a big deal in this game. Like high mobility flying is like it is king.
Yeah, it makes the Ghost Army, like I said, one of my regular opponents is Nighthaunt, and God, are the Nighthaunt scary in Warcry. What I enjoy is how many armies play. They feel like little versions of the big army, but you get to use models you might like, but that might not be very good in the big game, but they're like really fun here.
Do you think that that's a design choice? Do you think that they look at like the bigger games and they go, nobody ever buys this model because we screwed up the rules or it doesn't fit in the meta or whatever. It's not enough. It's not enough punch for how many points it is. So then they go and they look at like the smaller game and they go, what if we make it so that it's better in this game? I mean, it makes sense because there are people out there who are like, I like this model, but I've run it now twice in a game and it's always hot garbage, so I'm going to leave it home. And then when you go, oh, look, now it's cool in, I don't know, like Kill Team or something like that. I mean, I think there's definitely some sort of thing that they could do that way, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think when I don't know if it's like intentional, like it's easy for people to fall into the trap if they're all sitting around going, we will sell more boxes. Like, I'm sure it's always in their goal that they want to make products people sell.
Oh, certainly, yeah. But I think that I almost wonder if they're like throwing a bone sometimes. Like, we made this cool model. Yes. Nobody seems to run it because it's not effective. So we'll make it more effective in this game. And then that way, at least those people will be like, hey, cool, I can run this. I mean,
I think it's almost an emergent property of like, they know, right? Mm-hmm. They know what's sort of not being played or what's not being taken and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so when they come back to it a second time, I mean, if you just go back to your design a second time and you get a second bite at the apple of like, when I get to design rules for this again in a new system, you're like, all right, I'm not going to screw it up this time.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
It's just the natural sort of evolution of like, duffed it the first time. It's the same as like if you're playing golf and you play the same course, you're going to try not to screw up in the same place twice, right? So
yeah, you want to talk about powerhouses like KO.
Oh, sure, KO. Like 52 different cards. Yeah, the most complicated war bands.
Yes, because like each rigger box spins out like 8 different cards.
Yeah.
But the reality is that because of the flying from the Endrin, like those little bastards, like 250 point models with 12-inch fly, like range attack,
and all scary, very high power ranged attacks. Yeah.
It's like,
But but still they can actually have a couple. They can use their regular Arco dudes and still have like, even that guy's got like a little nice shot on him and it's relatively cheap. Like it's not giant rat cheap or anything, but that's another reason I love Skaven is because you can take dumb giant rats that are like 35 points. It's like the cheapest thing in the game. It's outrageous how cheap that is. But yeah, Beasts of Chaos is another one I didn't mention. I've had a lot of fun with beasts actually because I really love Minotaurs. Like I've always loved Minotaurs. I think they're like the coolest element of that army. And in the normal game, Minotaurs are kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Suboptimal, let's call it. Okay. But I actually really like them as my bruisers in Warcry, and then you can still supplement them with, little gore, Ungor, stuff like that. You can have little Ungor shooters running around relatively cheap. So I love swarming with the little dudes and then having the big giant guy with an axe just waiting to come in behind. And it lets me use a lot of models in fun ways. Because normally my Ungor, when I play my Beast of Chaos army, are just like guys standing around a stone waiting to be thrown in the pyre and killed. They don't actually do anything, so I don't get to play with those fun models. Here I actually get to play with them. So yeah,
like the standard beastmen, I think I've just always loved the faces. You know what I mean? They just have great faces. And I've got some, I don't know, I've got a dozen or 14 of them painted up and just sort of thrown in my my Chaos Soup AOS army. So every once in a while, I just have them, you stand there and wait for people to kill you, and you will slow them down maybe a turn. And that's what I use them for, but I just really enjoyed painting them. So I do need to get for Beasts of Chaos, I do need to get the card set or whatever so that I could play them. That's another thing that I'm a little confused by is like, they've got these little plastic or whatever, these little foil things.
Yep.
Like if you can't find these, are you basically SOL, or how do you know what I mean?
The tome, they reprint.
2019.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
The Tome of Champions 2019. I thought I had my book here, but I can't buy it.
I don't
It
have
seems to print all of the cards. Yeah, that book.
So this has actually got all the cards in it.
Yep.
Kind of.
For 2019.
Sure.
So like all the stuff that dropped obviously in January of 2020, those new warbands aren't in there. Right. But everything like the Night Haunt and the Gits and all that are in the back. The cards and their ability, like their allegiance card. And so I suspect that that's how that they will manage warbands in the future. Although let me point out that those are not in like the Banshee card that you got in your Night Haunt box, your Night Haunt Warcry box. The Banshee card that was specific to that doesn't show up in the Tome of Champions. You still have to have bought that like Warcry warband.
So the Beasts of Chaos are not in here because somewhere you might be able to find this still?
Because it launched in 2020, in January 2020. And so hypothetically, when that drops next December for the Tome of Champions 2020, because when they put dates on that, I assume they're doing this every year. What that means is that I would assume all the new warbands that are in there will be included. Now, the real question is will things like Fire Slayers, which were specific to so the Fire Slayers have never gotten cards. Fire Slayers have only showed up in a White Dwarf. And so the question is like, how are they going to do Fire Slayers? Are they going to release cards eventually? Are cards going to get integrated into the Tome of Champions? Who knows?
The cards are the thing, honestly, right now to some degree, and the availability of the cards is the thing that bothers me the most of Warcry. Just because like my local shop sort of like didn't quite order the original first kind of wave, and so then they couldn't get
3 waves now. I think is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
1, 2, at least 3 waves.
Yeah, I
think there's been 4 actually.
But yes, if they didn't order all of them, that's rough.
Right. Yeah. So that's and you can't just buy them from the. In my mind, and again, this is probably I'm not a business person particularly, but at some point, I would think that they would just, I don't know, sell them as an ebook or do something,
Sure.
I just,
a little flip through app or something where you can just like zip through all the cards. Yeah. I'll say I learned my lesson because when the first wave came out, which by the way, that first wave, everything from that is in the Tome of Champions, and obviously the Tome is awesome because it also. The Tome did so much. It restored what I actually wanted most out of the game, which was a more like, for lack of a better way of calling it, and this is like somewhat incorrect, but it's still close enough to people know what I mean. It restored a more Mordheim style campaign where you could like grow and get weaker and get injured and, blah, 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 blah. And like, that's what I'm all about. I'm all about that kind of campaign play. I played Mordheim for ever and ever and ever and ever. And, so that first wave, I didn't get everything, and I missed out on them. Exactly what you said. Like I was just like, I'll only order these. I ordered like maybe half of them or something. I was like, these are the ones I probably would want. And then they were gone like just instantly.
Bought every single one.
Yeah, and so from wave 2 and wave 3, I was like, nope, not making that mess. Just as soon as they came out, I was like, select all, yes, please, thank you. Because in the end. It was like $8 for a pack of cards. It's not bad.
8 to 10 to 12, I think maybe. That the KO one might be that expensive because it comes in a box actually with it's got those things so that people can carry it, kind of like the Ark of the Covenant. It's very heavy.
Yeah.
It's so heavy.
Yes. It has to get wheeled in separately. It's like it comes actually somebody because it's KO and they're very mercantile. Actually, somebody shows up at your house with them in a briefcase that they've handcuffed to their hand, and you have to give them the secret code. You have to read them the character code. Yeah, no. So I got all of them, and I put mine in. You two won't be able to see this, but everybody at home will. I have all mine in like a magic card binder. Okay, so like all the cards are in the magic card type of standard 9-slot card sleeves, and then I found these special sleeves you can order that I think are for like for photos, for like 4x6 photos or something. Okay. Like for like photo albums that you're
either 4x6 or 5x7. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, so you can get like these 4x6 photo album pages that only have like 2 per page, 2 slots per page, and so I just use those at the front of every section. So then like that separates all the actual cards for me, and I found that to be like super convenient because I can just flip through and be like, oh, okay, there's one side of the page is their dice and one side of the page is the cards. Awesome, good to go.
I have a shoebox.
High tech.
And I did deck boxes, like little sliding hard deck boxes, that I have all of mine in, and then the obviously all of the army cards, all the English ones, I've preserved those. Everything else went into storage. And then I just have the stack, so it works.
All right. So I've got a question for you, gentlemen. Here's my question. Have you looked at something in Warcry and got either figures you thought you would not ever buy, or got into a, have you understand what I'm saying? Has Warcry lured you into figs you would have previously thought, nah, I'm not going to really be about that. But then when you saw them in Warcry, either because you only had to get a few of them instead of a whole army or something like that, did it trap you in any way? You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I would say that it has not caused me yet, but there are definitely the committee in my head is talking about like KO. I think would be an interesting thing to try out, just because again, it's the exact same thing that I've got with Kill Team, where I was never going to run a Grey Knights army, but I can build and paint 5 and then have a fun little kind of roster, and then it gives me that it's like a buffet, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I've been saying that for a long time, but now buffets are like not a super good idea, really. So I might have to come up with a different analogy. I don't know, but nonetheless, this is the same thing a little bit with Warcry. There's part of me that's like, yeah, definitely, I could see myself, after I get some other projects done, maybe doing a little bit of KO just to see what it's kind of, just to get different painting techniques. Like that's a warband I could see painting up with enamel washes and having them be a little grungy and oily.
Oh, sure.
And that I think could be a lot of fun. So yeah, I am kicking that idea around, but skirmish games do that for me. Like skirmish games, skirmish games make me think more about armies than big games do, because it takes so much longer to get an army done.
Right.
Seems obvious, I guess, but it wasn't up until about, I don't know, 5 to 10 years ago, it seems. So
it's just such a less of a weight on your shoulders, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, the one that did this was Gitz. Like, I have less than 0 interest in painting 120 goblins / whatever. That just sounds like a nightmare. But I found I really liked playing them in Warcry, and I was like, oh, I liked the sculpts. I think goblins are cute. They're funny little things, right? I just don't want to paint 100 of them. But when I found out I could do 12 figs or 10 figs, and that's an army depending on how many of the big boingy boys you happen to use or whatever, right? I was like, yeah, okay, I'm in for that. And I went out and just looked at, went online and found like somebody selling individual Boingrot Bounders, and I had my own goblins and all netters and all that stuff already, and squigs and everything else. So then, boom, now I've got a warband, good to go, right? I went out and got 2 little individual guys, and done. So
like my next kill team is Tyranids.
Right.
Because, I've always wanted to paint Tyranids in like a really interesting way, but I've never wanted to paint 80 to 100 to 200 of them. So,
right.
That's definitely.
Very much the same thing.
I was in the process of like selling down a bunch of my like off collection stuff that I wasn't going to use. And like, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna get rid of this stuff. And then Warcry went back up on the rise, and I started really engaging it and building warbands. And I was like in the process of selling my Skaven stuff, and I'm like, I'm gonna take these 3 Storm Fiends out of this collection and I'll sell that stuff off. I'm gonna hold these.
Yeah.
And this is and now I have most of a warband.
Yeah.
And so for me, it immediately okay, I'm back and I have a bunch of Skaven models that I hadn't planned on playing, but because I had the Skaven Underworld's warband, I had the makings of a lot of the other small miscellaneous models that I needed, combined with the Storm Fiends to actually have a full warband of really fun sculpts.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, we could talk probably a long time about the various warbands that we like the most or things we've had, and maybe we can dip into that a little. But I want to touch on a question here first, especially for people who might be watching this and might be looking at sort of the products that are out there. And like we mentioned, you can get because a lot of the cards aren't available, and let's say you're trying to get into it, right? So okay, great. You can go Tome of Champions and get the first wave stuff. If you need the second or third wave, or I think maybe it's only the third wave that's not in there. I don't remember exactly how it's split out, but whatever. If you can't get your hands on the cards, I will say that there are lots of places there are lots of ways you can just Google it and find people who've put up the card images. So because they're kind of widely unavailable, especially in some of the later waves. But there are 3 books basically, right? You've got your core book, your core set book. You got your Mercenaries and Monsters, or Monsters and Mercenaries. I can never remember the exact way which order they put them in. You got your Tome of Champions.
It's Monsters and Mercenaries.
There you go.
Yep.
There it is. Okay. So here's my thing. I have found almost no cause to use the Monsters and Mercenaries book.
Right.
My group, we're just not using the mercs. And we did a game or two where we fought a monster. It was okay, that was kind of a cool thing. Right? But the Tome of Champions is I'm all in for that. That was the best book they did for it. So to me, if I was going to talk to a new player, I would say you don't need the Monsters and Mercenaries book, but do definitely pick up the Tome of Champions. But I just want to know what you guys think about that.
I want to play with what Monsters and Mercenaries came out. I'm looking through it and I'm like, cool, I have a bunch of these models already.
Right.
I'll be able to bring them in. The Chaos Gargant, Terrorgeist, and a bunch of the mercs too, I don't know, the different Lord of Plagues and all kinds, or not Lord of Plagues, but the other ones, those other guys with the fat guys with the big axes and stuff like that. Lord of Plagues, I think, is on the horse, if I remember correctly, unless he's the Harbinger of Decay. I don't know. It's all basically this. It's like Taco Bell. It's just the same ingredients over and over again, and I'm just like,
sure.
It's the Lord of Plague Decay, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yes.
So, but I love the concept of being able to bring those in to expand the game. But I'll be honest, that I haven't yet. But I want to. But if it comes down to where the rubber meets the road, it hasn't actually happened. But I like that the ability to do so is there. But I totally agree with you. It's not a requirement. It's if someone was getting started, they need the core book, and it's a super smart idea to probably have the Tome of Champions for this year. But that other book is easily in third place.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like the optional one, right? Hey, if you think that's a cool thing, or after you've been playing for a while, you want to make a reach. Sure, go for it. It's not a bad book. That's not what I'm saying. It just feels the most optional. That's yeah. All right, right on. So Tom, with your experience, you've been playing with your son or whatever. Yeah. What's he been running? What we didn't fill this out. What got him excited?
His normal armies.
Is that what it is? Just he wanted to take his normal armies and play.
Wait, I could play Stormcast, right? And I was like, yeah, any of it. And he's like, any of it? He's like, the guys with the crossbows and the birds? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, could I do Liberators? And I was like, yeah, there's a warband of that. And he's like, do they have are prosecutors the angels in there? And I said, yeah, actually the angels are. Wow. And so for him, it was a new lease on these other armies that he's already played. We have a bunch of stuff painted. And then for him, it was oh, wait, I'm just going to play my Iron Jaws. You know, and so like he could just take the models that he already had, and he's been painting those with contrast, and so like he could put basically almost an entirely painted army of his own on the table.
Nice.
And so like that's a great feeling for a 9-year-old.
Sure.
And so yeah, for him it's just like he doesn't care about any of the other stuff. He just wants to play with his model, like functionally his armies, his models.
Sure.
And that's what's really grabbed his attention.
Just another chance to keep using those figs in a different way. Does the time difference, like you mentioned the attention span thing, have you found the time difference for him makes a big impact because the game is shorter?
It's such a big deal. Like it's like he can do 1,000-point game. You know, he's like, well, the last game we did for normal AOS was a 1,500-point game. So like he's pushing me. He wants to do bigger and bigger games. But I can just tell, like, we get done with one of those games, he's just ready to go play Fortnite, or he's ready to go do something else.
Sure.
When we get done with a Warcry game, he's like, want to go again? Like,
Gotcha.
you know, and so he's like, let me grab something else. Like, let me get a different warband to go and like, let's leave everything set up and do it again. Let's do it again.
Unless it's one of your like very earliest kind of learning games, I'm finding that it's not a let's just play this once kind of game to some degree.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And so we'll do rounds of like 2 or 3 games easily in one setting, where we'll sit down, pound out a game. And some games, because of just the dynamics of some of games have been non-bows. And what I mean by that is like after setup in turn 1, we know who's going to win. Like there's no question because of mobility, because of just how things have like, because of placement, like it's just obvious. Like when in that one game that we recorded that I was telling you about, like when we were going into, as soon as I grabbed at the end of turn 2, he's like, we don't need to play turn 3. You've won. And he said, because I don't have the movement to get to you, so I can't actually get to the objective. You know, and so like he looks at the table and goes, okay, good game, shakes a hand, let's do another one. And so we're just, I see more, we get to do more games and experience more armies because the games are just so much faster.
Right on. No, it makes sense. So let's talk a little bit of like just sort of your experience with actual stuff on the table. Okay. Mm-hmm. So obviously, you know, one of your core elements going on here is how you're splitting your army into 3, right? Mm-hmm. Into your hammer, your dagger, your shield, or whatever. How much have you found that's tough for people to get their head around at the very beginning when they have to like make this decision of what's going in what group, and how much that's like, do you find newer people make mistakes, like they try to front load everything, or you know, or like they bet it all, or they try to spread it even, they're like, oh well, hopefully I get lucky and get the right one, you know what I'm saying, we get the right group coming in first, or do they have bad experiences? Like how much have you found that to be a challenge?
I think that honestly, at least in my mind, and I haven't had a ton of discussions about it, I guess. But I think that my main issue with that is that it seems a little, in Kill Team, there's this phase that kind of you do before the main game starts called the scout phase.
Right. And
we just ignore it. Like me, amongst the people I play with and stuff like that, we just go like, yeah, we're not going to do that.
Because I've never played the scout phase once.
It's just not, yeah. It's like, we've tried it a couple of times. You go, well, maybe, you know, after reading it, you go, okay, well, I guess we'll try it. Maybe, I don't know. It seems not useful, but let's give it a try. Maybe there's something there, some hidden gem. And then you play it and you're like, well, that was a waste of 5 minutes or whatever. So we just don't do it. You know, every once in a while you do that cool thing where you can make maybe like a piece of terrain be explosive, and then every once in a while you actually remember that someone on your opposing team is actually standing on that piece of terrain, and then you're like, hey, you're supposed to roll to see if you die. Oh, you didn't. Okay, cool. And so it's just these 3 groupings to me kind of feel like a little bit like that, except that you can't really decide not to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a real part of the game, but it's kind of a little bit of a bummer, at least for me at the beginning. You're just like, and you're right. It's people look at this and go, okay, so I got to have at least this many, but not this many, but more than half. It's just it's clunky, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, I've got a follow-up question, but Tom, I'll let you go and tell me what you think.
I think it can determine some games before they start.
Sure.
because when we're like, because again, we flip cards, so we play like, down the line, which means that like terrain is dictated, setup is dictated, scenario objectives are dictated, twists, like all of it we just flip down. But the consequences because of that, like who ends up on what side is really important, because deployment based on where objectives are and stuff like that and where terrain is, like when my son's running his Iron Jaws with that movement 3, like it's real important that he has the right models in the right area.
Right.
And if he doesn't, then he's going to end up spending a bunch of dice just trying to move. And so like it can really influence the game. But for him, I mean, he's just basically went like fairly like balanced across the, like
sure, he just splits them up.
He just splits them up, and it's fine. For my Daughters of Cain, because I have a lot of mixed hitting, like a lot of it is just witch elf sisters and harpies because I don't have any snakes. Like I have one snake leader because I use my Bloodwrack Medusa for it, but I don't have the normal unit models for it. And so the consequence of that is that like I don't have any real like hard hitters. We were talking about like having those like really punchy models.
Yep.
And so I have to play really cagey with my witch elves. And I have to like double and triple team in fights just to try to get weight of dice to take down big stuff. And so the consequence of that is that like when I play Daughters, it's a lot more swingy because like my dagger formation is just 2 Sisters of Slaughter, like a Sister of Slaughter and a Witch Elf. And so like they just don't have the killing power against really tough stuff like buckets of hit points with high defenses, Iron Jaws. Like they just can't bring, those 2 cannot bring one of those models down, like a brute down. It's just not possible.
Right, sure. He's just going to smash them. Yes.
He's just going to smash them. And so like if I get a matchup based on like where the card says I have to deploy these things, like it really hurts. And so, but it keeps it interesting, right? Because if I could actually like tactically master my setup every time with optimal things and it like more games may become non-games as opposed to it literally just being a dice roll functionally. Which I think for more of the beer and pretzels, like fun, like, in table style play with me and my son, I like the randomness because it like there's more games or games. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of the things I think is interesting about Warcry to some degree is that I know that there are organized play like tournaments and things like that, and it just doesn't seem like a tournament game,
right?
A little bit.
Yeah, because it's especially if you are using the cards, like it can be pretty swingy.
Yeah.
In a lot of regards. So it's I don't know. It's
that's why playing 3 games is great,
right?
Because
sure.
we'll sit down and we'll like we'll get into the first game and be like, oh, I got screwed on cards, and then the next game, like it can flip, it can change, it can swing different between games very quickly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are still people out there that from what I understand, at least in the tournament scene, that still really hate the random side flipping thing with Age of Sigmar.
Sure, of course they.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I that's one of the things when they first announced 5 years ago, and they're like, oh yeah, and it's no longer like first turn is just the rest of the game, and just that's the alternating. You roll every turn. I was like, oh sweet, that's pretty cool. And I just immediately started hearing people were going, well, we're not going to do it that way. And I'm like, all right. So it's different strokes, different folks.
Sure. Yeah, I will say that I agree. Like I think it doesn't feel like a tournament game to me, which is not a negative statement. To me, that's actually a positive statement. I like it better because, like I said, we play the sort of either Coalition of Death rules or like the Triumph of Treachery, all the multiplayer stuff that's out of there. Like, because the core book has all that stuff in it. You can play I don't know if people ever use this stuff or look at it, but you can play like the Coalition, and they have multiplayer. Where's it at? There it is. So they have like the 4-player maps as well with the different things you can do there. We use a lot of that stuff. We've made up a couple of our own, obviously, because I do wish they would. It's the one thing that they don't do as much of anymore. I wish with some of these small skirmish games, they would put out more. You just do it as a White Dwarf. Hello, GW. Hi. Thanks for watching. Very much appreciate it. Here's my special request for this week. Please do a White Dwarf in the future that focuses on like Coalition of Death and Triumph and Treachery for Warcry. Introduces a bunch more multiplayer victory conditions and twists and scenarios and stuff like that. So I think that would be That'd be great. I'd be all about that. Thank you. Yeah, just because I think that that's what I like about it, is for the same reason that I like things like classically like Triumph and Treachery. It's not meant to be a tournament experience. It's meant to be just kind of fun and to let randomness do a lot of work, right? Yeah. And that makes it more surprising as to what the outcome is, which I think is good.
And not everybody's interested in that, obviously.
Sure.
Like, but I think that, I don't know, I'm a big fan of having fun while I'm playing a game, but that's not for everybody. I get that. I know, I get it. But yeah, I mean, if you are definitely, if it's about winning, then all that extra randomness does become a real inhibitor into your potential strategy. I don't even know the rest of those words because I don't really play that way, but like there's more strategy things or whatever that you're supposed to be doing.
I think it's called strategery.
Good point. I mispronouncing it, but yeah. So I like that because of and again, if it was a 2-hour game, that would be a little bit of a bummer, especially if you were like halfway through or even a third of the way through. You're like, well, I have lost this because of the cards. But when it's a 20-30 minute game, you're like, well, we'll just play another one. It'll be fine.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. All right, so I guess we've covered most of what I wanted to cover. So I'll just kind of throw it over and say, Adam, what anything else we didn't touch on that you're that excites you that you wanted to touch on with when it comes to Warcry?
Well, I think that it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. People have been noticing that with Kill Team, like, we've had these 3 different the Saturday morning kind of Twitch stream things like that. There's basically nothing talked about for Kill Team.
Yeah, silent.
Yeah, every once in a great while there's like a little bit of something in a White Dwarf, but there's not much. And is the Zote? Is that it? No, that's for Blackstone Fortress, isn't it?
Right. The singular Zote. Yeah, he was Blackstone Fortress.
Yeah. So my wonder is if you're going to get that same type of thing for Warcry. I mean, at this point, if we're going to start putting apples to apples, you got your core base box. We've done that on both of them. Yep. You've got your Monsters and Mercenaries, which somebody in the chat earlier said that's basically commanders for Kill Team. In that, a lot of people kind of don't play it.
And also it introduces those more like hero level models who can suddenly join up. Yep.
But there's not an elites for Warcry yet that I've seen, or something equivalent.
Sure.
The tome, like I'm sure there'll be another tome in 2020 at some point or something like that, but it'll be interesting. So I don't know, and I guess the other question is, to some degree, do we need to constantly have more and more and more stuff? It's important in a game like Necromunda where everything is completely self-contained.
Right.
You can't play Necromunda with 40K models. I mean, you can play with whatever the hell you want, but technically there's no rules for that kind of thing. Whereas Kill Team, it's all about 40K models. Warcry split the difference in that, kind of like Necromunda, they have their own kind of model line that came out, different, Chaos Warbands. But then you can also play with the Age of Sigmar stuff, kind of like you do in Kill Team.
Right, and as we saw, every time they release an army, I doubt maybe not giants, but
yeah, that's good.
Well, but
every time they release an army, you get a new Warcry faction automatically, right? And
exactly.
We know there's new Warcry specific warbands coming because they did give us that review on the show, right? Where we got the nice dark elf ghosty cloak dude. Oh, by the way, somebody in the comments said that, and I didn't know this because apparently this was in the latest White Dwarf, is the Zote has rules for Kill Team along with the Sisters of Silence. So there you go. Now he can be in Kill Team. So
there you go.
The most recent White Dwarf. So that's cool.
Yeah. They did finally put the Ambot into Kill Team. They've got special rules for it. He kind of randomly runs around and hits people.
Nice. But I think that may be one of the differences, is because with Kill Team, you don't have designated models. We really haven't, we've seen them release Kill Team boxes with models in it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have its own model line.
Mm-hmm, true.
And so I wonder if that's going to be part of the difference, because with And it makes me wonder if we have another edition, as weird as it sounds to say, another edition of Kill Team coming with its own design model line. Like, because of how outrageously successful Warcry has been in that sense. That, like, maybe that's where the silence is coming from. Because what I will say is that, like, they are clearly running with it, because not only do we have the Chaos Warbands, we have this new, like, Disciples of Cain warband coming, which one would only assume it's heralding other releases coming as well. And in kind of in light of that, like, it just makes me wonder. I don't know that we're going to see it slow down in the same way that Kill Team did.
I wonder if a slowdown is a bad thing. You know,
Sure.
Like if in a perfect world, that original starter box for Kill Team would just be evergreen and always available.
Sure.
Oh,
Now
so
that would sort of be a bit business suicide to do, because I'm sure that was probably
a loss leader.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that they lost money on it, like you do in video game consoles in the early days of a new release, but I'm sure it didn't make as much, margin as they're used to in any given product or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. So to some degree, yes, a loss leader. So I can see that. But I can tell you that I get comments from people all the time saying, I'm really unhappy that I can't get that box,
Sure.
And I always tell people, well, but you can still get the book. So as long as they keep putting the book out there, yeah, I mean, the terrain is slightly more expensive if you buy it this way, or maybe a lot more expensive, depending, the silicums and all that kind of extra boxes. But, it's still there. And I just don't know if there needs to be this constant, like, avalanche of releases for every game in, say, GW's line. I understand it with Age of Sigmar. I understand it with 40K. Those are the two big tent poles. But with these smaller games, like, you release some stuff, something like Kill Team, you release the books, you put out some stuff. If you start to put out too much stuff for it, it seems like you're just trying to come up with more stuff for people to buy.
Right.
I mean, I kind of felt like Arena was like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't seem like, I don't know. Well, even Commanders. Like, when I bought the Commanders book, I was like, this is cool. I like this. This is really neat. I have never yet played a game of Commanders. I've built Commanders that are to be eventually played, but I've never actually gotten into a situation to play them. Elites, I play all the time. But yeah, so, I mean, I don't know that something like Warcry, I don't know that, I mean, the benefit of them making specific Warcry models, it does make it different than Kill Team. It's not a one-to-one transfer there. But yeah, I mean, I suppose it also completely depends on popularity. I mean, I don't know. I can tell you that it seems like the people I like to play with like to still play Kill Team a decent amount, but I don't know that it maybe went as gangbusters as they had hoped.
Sure, as it was initially. And I mean, I think the nice part here is AOS still has a lot more, like, well, let's just call it what it is. AOS releases more new armies than 40K does, right? Like, you can have very brand new forces continually roll out in AOS, and probably that'll be a thing for the next couple years. And I'm not saying like every month, but a couple of times a year, 1, 2, 3 times a year, something like that, you're going to get a new army. That automatically injects a new force into Warcry without them having to do anything, right? I mean, they have to make the rules for those cards, but that's a pretty low bar, right? They didn't have to go design a special product for that. And so I think that helps. And then if they want to supplement, put out a book or a book and the Tome of Champions or something a year, then they can, but they still can keep the interest level in it up, where there's like, hey, there's still some reason to talk about it, to play it. The new person can get into it. No matter what army you're running, you got it. But they don't have to like try to hit you with the deluge of stuff where you feel like you're on the treadmill.
Right.
So yeah, I think that is a good, it's just a sort of almost a built-in advantage just because of the fact it's taking place in AOS. Right. So yeah. Tom, anything else you wanted to cover?
I mean, I'll be interested to see, like, if they pull any more of the shenanigans with Warcry specific boxes for classic armies. And what I mean by that is, like, obviously they have like the specific like Corvus Cabal and Splintered Fang and the Chaos, warbands, but like they also, as folks know, they released like the Gloomspite Gits, the Night Haunt, and the Stormcast Eternals, like boxes, right?
Yeah, so like this.
Yep.
But for Stormcast, not for Stormcast, but for the Gits and the Night Haunt, there were exclusive unit cards in those boxes that you can get no other way than buying those boxes. And it'll be interesting to see if that was a one-off that they wanted to explore, or if that's like going to become a hook.
Yeah. I mean, they did that a lot in Kill Team.
They did a lot. And that's what turned me off, was I realized that if I wanted to have like all these things, I had to buy all these things. And I was like, yeah, I'm not that in. Like, I'm in, but not that in. And so here I was super excited because I felt like if I had the cards, I'd be fine. But now what I discovered when I was like, wait, Banshees have cards. Where are these cards? And then I began tracking it down, trying to figure out, or like, why are they giving the Snufflers? Why are they giving those models in the Warcry box and they don't have cards? Well, they do have cards, but only in that box. And so it was just such a feel bad. And so I hope they don't go down that road.
Right.
So we'll see what they do. But so I say that to say, if you're wanting to do Night Haunt or Gloomspite, pick up those Warcry boxes. They're great deals, and they have exclusive cards that you're not going to get any other way.
Nice. All right.
So
yeah, my final thought is just, as I've mentioned so far, like, look at, it's worth picking up the cards if you can still get them. If you happen to have a store that still has them, it's certainly worth picking them up. A lot of, local stores were closed for a long time in a lot of places recently, so some people might still have some stock on their shelves because they weren't necessarily able to sell as easy in some parts of the country. So if your stores are opening back up and you're interested, it could be worth a call to the store. Maybe they're doing a curbside pickup now because they opened back up. Like, some of my stores just opened back up for that here in my state. And so, like, if you're interested, it might be worth a call to say, hey, do you still have any of these? What do you got? And just do a little curbside of it or something like that, or pick them up.
And GW, the web store still has like 20 plus different armies. Yeah. So it's not like they're fully sold out. Right. It's just that select warbands are now sold out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say that, like, the cards are just, to me, such a low bar investment, as you mentioned, like $8, $10, $12 a pack, that even if it's for an army you don't necessarily think you love, like, I got all of them, and I discovered armies by looking at the cards and getting interested and, like, reading their abilities and thinking about the models, and that inspired me. So, it doesn't always necessarily, like, no, there is a 0% chance that I go do a whole army of Gloomspite Gits. Because I got that warband. 0%. There's no way. I do not have the patience, the tolerance to paint that whole army. But it let me get something on the table and have fun with a warband I really like. And that's a cool thing. So you can tip a toe into the waters of some of these things in ways you couldn't otherwise. And I got that through the cards. Like, I bought the cards first, read the cards, said, oh, I actually like these guys. They look pretty cool. Then I played one, and I was like, oh, okay, I definitely want to play this, right? And there we go. And then, boom, then I had a warband. So that's how it happened. So yeah, check it out. There you go. All right, Adam, thank you, sir, very much for spending some time with us tonight.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me.
Hey, anytime, brother. And I hope that all this clears up and we get to see you in person again sometime soon, whatever it breaks out to.
Same here. Yeah.
For all of you out there watching, thank you so much. Hey, don't forget to hit the like button. If you like this discussion, hit like. You're all here. Look, it's just move your mouse. It's like this much. It's like move your mouse from here to here. It's that far. Boom, click it. And that helps increase engagement and helps other people find the channel, which we really appreciate very much. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for watching. Everybody out there, stay safe. Get some games in if you can, whether remotely or just with whoever you're sheltering in hobby with. As Adam mentioned at the beginning, don't forget when you're finishing those hobby projects during this, and you're posting them on Instagram, tag them Shelter and Hobby. That is shout out to Emily, the creator of that hashtag, and now all of the tabletop minions are hopefully sharing their hashtag Shelter and Hobby. So keep doing that, keep painting, stay positive, and as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.